Joe Biden said. We heard what he said. He said the United States will never forget, will follow ISIS, these terrorists, to the gates of hell. Here's the question. Does that include Syria?
Wolf, I couldn't say it any better than the Vice President said it. He was, as he always is, forcefully clear about what we're doing, just as the President was earlier today in Estonia. We are putting together an effort, a comprehensive strategy to disrupt ISIL, to degrade it, and ultimately to defeat it. But that is something that takes tremendous effort and takes time. We're putting the pieces in place. We're trying to get an Iraqi partner with the formation of a new government that brings all of the communities in, that can act as an effective partner on the ground in Iraq. We're building out a regional coalition so that the countries that have the most immediately at stake are in this effort. But as the President recognized, this is something that will take time to get to the ultimate aim of defeating ISIL. But in the meanwhile, we'll begin to take steps to start to put them in a box to get them off their toes and onto their heels.
So does it mean that the U.S. is also ready to go into Syria to destroy ISIS?
What it means is, at this point, Wolf, there is, as you know, virtually no border between Iraq and Syria. The group is moving back and forth. We have to look at this problem holistically, including what we're able to do and what partners are able to do, what the Iraqis are able to do in Iraq, and also in Syria. In Syria, we've been very focused on building up a moderate opposition, an opposition that not only can deal with the Assad regime, but that can also deal with ISIL. The key thing is this, Wolf. You know, we've seen a very good example in Iraq recently. We took action to deal with a threat to our personnel in Erbil, at our consulate there. ISIL was moving on onto Erbil. We helped empower the Iraqi security forces and the Kurdish Peshmerga using air power, but they were on the ground, and they were then able to take the space that had been freed up. So it's important to have partners on the ground, and that's what we're building out.
I know you're working on a new strategy, and the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State will leave the NATO summit, go to the region, go to the Middle East, try to put that coalition of partners together. What's the timeline that you have now for finalizing a strategy to try not only to dismantle or diminish, degrade, but actually to destroy ISIS?
Look, well, this is going to come together in the coming weeks. As we speak, the President's deeply engaged with our partners in Wales at the NATO summit. In the days ahead, Secretary Kerry will be going out to the region. Secretary Hagel will be following suit. Lisa Monaco, our counterterrorism advisor, will also be heading out. All of this in an effort to put together a coalition of countries, each of whom have a lot at stake if ISIL is allowed to consolidate its place and to grow from where it is.
What do you make of the criticism the President's getting when he said the U.S. strategy would be to degrade and destroy ISIS, but then a few minutes later, in response to another question, it would be to get ISIS to the point of becoming a manageable problem, his words, manageable problem. It sounded to some as if the President was walking back from the original statement to degrade and destroy.
No, absolutely not, Wolf. The President was entirely consistent. What he said, and what he said very clearly, is this. This is going to be a long-term effort. In the near term, what we can begin to do is to disrupt ISIL, and indeed we've actually started to do that in Iraq with the strikes that we've taken. Second, we get to the point of disrupting them, really getting them off their toes, onto their heels. That's the same thing as making the problem manageable. And then, over time, with this coalition, we get them to the point of defeat. But the President was clear and wanted to be clear with the American people and folks around the world that that's something that's going to take time. So what he said was entirely consistent. There's a continuum that goes from disrupting them to degrading them or managing them and ultimately to defeating them.
Because the Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, told our Jim Sciutto today that ISIS right now controls half of Syria, half of Iraq. They're very, very powerful. Can ISIS be destroyed simply by air power?
No, it takes a comprehensive strategy, which is exactly what the President is building and exactly why we're being so deliberate about it. It requires elements of military force. It requires dealing with foreign fighters who are flowing in and out of the region. It requires dealing with their financing that they're getting. It requires empowering local actors, the Iraqis, the moderate Syrian opposition, to be able to deal with them. It requires taking away their local base of support by taking, for example, Sunnis in Iraq who were alienated by the previous government and getting them to line up with the new government. That's what the comprehensive strategy is all about, and it takes time to put together.
Senator Rand Paul made a statement today. I'll put it up on the screen. He said, if I were president, I would call a joint session of Congress. I would lay out the reasoning of why ISIS is a threat to our national security. and seek congressional authorization to destroy ISIS militarily. Is that a good recommendation?
We have been in close consultations with Congress throughout this process. Of course, as you know, Congress has been out. They're just coming back in next week. I would anticipate that those consultations will intensify. Look, at the end of the day, this, as the President has said, is going to have to be a sustained effort. And it's going to take time, and it'll probably go beyond even this administration to get to the point of defeat. And in order to have that sustained effort, we need sustained support. And we'll need Congress's support. So for sure, we will be closely consulting with Congress to build that support for anything that we do.
Does ISIS have the capability to attack the U.S. homeland?
Right now, Wolf, ISIS is focused on the region. It poses a clear and present danger to people in Iraq, to people in Syria, to people in the region, and indeed, as we've seen tragically, to Americans in the region. It has aspirations to threaten the homeland. We don't think it's there yet, but if it's left unchecked, it could get there, and that's what we're determined to prevent.
As you know, the anniversary of 9/11 is a week from tomorrow. Do you anticipate the U.S. taking some new dramatic measures, just out of an abundance of caution, if you will, to make sure there isn't some sort of anniversary attack?
Wolf, weeks ago, the President gathered all of his national security advisors, Homeland Security advisors, in anticipation of the anniversary of 9/11, as we do every year, because that can be a time of heightened concern, to make sure that we were doing everything possible against all lines of effort to be vigilant and to prevent any threats. And I'm very confident that we've done just that.
Is there a credible threat out there right now?
Look, Wolf, right now what we're seeing is an intense threat from ISIL in the region, in Iraq, in Syria, to the neighboring countries. But we're constantly vigilant about any potential threats to the homeland. Right now, ISIL's focused on the region, not the homeland. But again, if it's left unchecked, it will become a threat to the homeland.
What about any other al-Qaeda-related or inspired groups? Any threat, a credible threat from them?
All I can report to you, Wolf, is that we are constantly vigilant about that, and we remain so right now.